Today, we are talking about decluttering. And we're not just talking about decluttering your physical space, but your mental and emotional space too. My guest is Mika Perry, who is a mom of three, a podcast host herself, and also an organizing and lifestyle expert who serves women through her inspired ideas, her simple solutions for a more beautiful, healthier, and happier life. I loved how Mika has this way of making the practice of decluttering our lives both simple and attainable. She shares how the goal is not perfection. The goal is to create habits that give you more time and more energy to enjoy the things in life that are most important to you. I took so much away from this conversation, and I think you will too. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am thrilled. I get to host one of my new friends on the podcast. So, Mika, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lindsay. I'm really excited to be your new friend.
You guys have heard me share before how that's just kind of how I roll. I just find people who are amazing and then I make them be my friends. So this is now official. We have it recorded that we're friends. We are friends. So it's funny, I was thinking back to how we actually met, and I didn't remember the story until you shared it just last week on your Instagram story about the podcasting event hosted by our friends at the Emerald. I had attended, and I really, really wanted to be there because I was getting ready to launch this show, and then you were actually a presenter at that event. Because you and your hubby have an amazing podcast, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I'll share from my side of the story, and then you could share yours. But a lot of people didn't know I had had LASIK eye surgery the day before. So I rolled in, and I had to wear my sunglasses all day. Like my eyes were really sensitive, and I felt like such a weirdo because I was rocking sunglasses inside all day long. And I was like really self-conscious about it. But then you could tell me from your standpoint what you thought until you knew the true story behind it.
So there was this really cool chick sitting in the back in the corner with this awesome denim jacket. I think your collar was flipped and you had your sunglasses on. And I was like, who is this chick? Like, what is her vibe? And not in like a who does she think she is, but like, can I be like her? And then we did kind of like round table things where we had little breakaway sessions. And then after mine, I like said hi, or you said hi to me maybe just because you're so friendly and so sweet. And you're like, hi, I'm Lindsay. I had LASIK. That's why I wear this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the cutest person. And I love that she like came after LASIK surgery. Like a lot of people would have stayed home and said, oh, you know what? Like, I'm good. Like, I'm going to kind of hang back. I have to wear sunglasses. I don't want to be that person. But you were like, I'm wearing sunglasses. I'm going to look amazing. And you were present. You were there. You showed up. And I think that is just one of the many testaments that you put out there for everyone of your commitment to your work and what you're doing. So I love it.
Oh my gosh. It was such a gift that to hear you recreate it that way, because I was so self-conscious that day. Isn't it funny how as women, we feel the need to announce the thing that we're self-conscious about? Like, oh, I can't believe I have this big pimple on my forehead, or, oh, I'm a weirdo, I'm wearing sunglasses inside. It just made me think about, wow, other people are so not thinking the same things that we are when we walk into a room.
Exactly. Like I noticed your super positive vibe and your big smile and your great voice. So, that's what I noticed.
Well, thank you. I will send you that $20 later, and I appreciate you making me feel better about that whole situation. But you were one of the people at that event I was most excited to connect with because I had followed along on social media for a little while. Actually, I think when you were announced as a speaker for that event was how I initially found you. And I like to say you're like one of those people who makes me feel like I have my life more together just by being in your presence. And I am excited to share today's topic because I think as women, we are juggling so many different things. none of us actually have our life together, but I think there's actually some very simple rituals that we can have in place that make us feel more like we do. Would you agree?
I 100% agree. And I love that you said rituals, because that's one thing too. I talk a lot about systems and organization, and I was a perfectionist. I've worked hard not to be. I didn't like that mindset, and I didn't like being in that place. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that as my work, and then also kind of work inside myself as a person. But moving away from like perfection and really rigid things, it was more like, how can we create rhythms and flow and energy and space and rituals that help us, get into deep work, that helps us have the room in our mind and in our physical space, in our workspace, to do all the things that we want to do and not feel burdened by it.
That's so good. And it's such a fast-paced life nowadays. We're being bombarded by information, by requests, by things we need to do from every angle. And I think just what makes me feel so much more centered is realizing that I do have a say, that there are things that I can put into practice, boundaries I can set in my physical space, in my mental space, to allow me to show up in the world as the creative, inspired, positive version of myself, because I'm not always that girl. But when I have certain things in place, I get to show up as the best version of me. Yeah. So I'm excited to share some of your tips. I would love to first start with just your story. For those who may not know you, who don't know about your blog and your cute family, share the story just of how you turned this passion for, I'm going to say organizing, but I'm sure that's like such the tip of the iceberg, but your passion and your story as a family, how you turned that into your purpose.
Yeah. So I have 3 girls, and my husband and I have been married for a little over 10 years now. And I originally was in finance. I was a stockbroker. Then I turned into a teacher. And then I turned into an entrepreneur with a professional organizing company. And I moved away from doing that as a service, as professional organizing, and having that business here. And for a while there, I was like, okay, I've had these 3 careers. And they're all different. They're very different. The first one was in finance. It was corporate. Second one was working basically for the government and working with children in a really hard environment. It was very, very challenging. And then the third was stepping into a role I never thought I'd be in, which is an entrepreneur. My husband has been an entrepreneur his whole life, basically. He came out of the womb wanting to make a buck and come up with an idea and and have his own business, very self-motivated and driven. But I felt a lot of comfort and security in a 9-to-5. So it was really surprising for me to find myself in professional organizing and running a team, growing and investing in myself in a business, and finding that I thrived in that. That's where my strengths shown. And I didn't think that could happen, and it did. But there were some things that happened that I just felt that it was time for me to close that business. And then I found myself in kind of a void of purpose. I wasn't sure what to do with my life. I knew that wasn't for me anymore, a service-based business where I would go into client homes, but I wasn't sure what my next move was. So for about a year and a half or so, maybe even 2 years, I just created. I used Instagram as my platform. I just let that be my creative outlet, not knowing what I was going to do, but knowing that there was something at the other end. And I had launched a blog by then. And that blog, actually, I set out not wanting to be a blogger. In fact, I think I made fun of myself. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a blogger now. And now I am. And, but really the intention of the blog initially was just as a place for my clients and organizing to come and learn more about me. And so that's where I really got into storytelling and kind of giving the background of what I was doing in client homes or just in my life. And then when I no longer had the clients coming, it was just people. Then I just continued storytelling. And then that led to the podcast, which has been and continues to be a passion project. We're not monetizing it right now. And it really is a place for my husband and I to dive deep into the topics that have been impactful for us. We decided on doing the podcast just, as a conversation we had in a car one day, and came up with a name. Our podcast is called Good to Be Home. And we have gone through a lot in our marriage and as business owners. And we wanted to tell our story, not because we thought we were these amazing people with this story that needed to get out there and it was going to save the world. But it's like, we're a couple that went through some really hard stuff, and let's just get it out there. And we joke that, if no one listens to this podcast, then it's okay, because then we have an audio recording. We're at 70 episodes now of mom and dad talking about all the things in their life. And so it's like this audio record of our family. So we just kind of keep that in the back of our mind. It's also kind of like a therapy session for Russ and I to go on there and talk about things. We have brought guests that have impacted us in our life. But we kind of stick to just like, hey, let's talk about, our tagline is balancing business and life. So that's kind of like the thread that is woven through everything that we do is, hey, we have all these roles. We're parents, we're husband and wife. We have businesses, we have ambition, we have goals. How do we weave that all together and stay balanced? And I know balance is a really hot trigger word. It's a topic, it's camp balance, camp no balance. But I think it's because I think people believe balance to be different things. I think sometimes people think of balance as perfection. You're doing all of those roles perfectly.
Right.
And that is, you can't do that. You cannot do that. I think we can all agree on that. But balance to me is that, you're practicing ways to do all those things without losing your mind. Yeah. And you find a center and you know how to prioritize. And so those are kind of like the little tips and tricks and ideas and conversations that I have now through the blog and the podcast and helping people through that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. There's a couple things I want to circle back to, because I think this is a place that a lot of women can find themselves in. When you talked about knowing that you were ready to transition from your service-based business, but not having a clear path for what that was going to look like, and you were just creating. And I think that is a phase some women find difficult to just be in and not try to rush through finding what their next thing, their next business, their next project is going to be, but creating for the sake of creating and sharing your story for the sake that it might inspire the next idea that you'll pursue. Can you talk just a little bit more? Was that difficult for you, or did you find it pretty easy just to be in that season during that time?
It was both. I found it difficult not knowing what I was doing for. Yeah. It felt a little bit directionless and purposeless. I didn't have my why. I didn't have a why. Yeah. And so, but my why at the moment really was just, I needed a creative outlet. I'm a creative person. I even just enjoyed taking photos and like editing them and posting them. Like that was just fun for me. And so I was like, you know what, that's okay. I can do that. But yeah, it is hard to be in that season and that point in your life where you are clearly pivoting, but you don't have an answer of where you're pivoting to. But what was strong for me was that I knew what I had been doing was not working for me, and it's not what I wanted. So that was strong enough to replace my fear of the unknown, of where I'm going. I wasn't sure, but I was very, very confident in my why I was stepping away from what I had been doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And I think tuning in and listening to our intuition, listening to sometimes even our bodies are giving us physical signs that it's time to pivot, it's time to close a chapter, it's time to just be still and allow the next inspiration to come. And I know for myself as a doer, that has always been a little difficult when I'm in those seasons, but looking back, they were so necessary. So I appreciate you sharing your take on that.
Yeah, I love that you said that you're a doer. I am too. And I think a lot of entrepreneurial people, and especially women, are doers. And it can be hard to do and not know why you're doing, or you can feel like really like buried by the fact that you're just doing. And like, what am I doing with this? Like I'm doing, but why? But yeah, I think it's important to keep that going. If that's something that drives you, just do it. Just do it. And you will never know where it leads you. You really won't. For us, it led to a podcast. I mean, and other ideas I have, coming up. And it's cool. I'm glad that I didn't just give up and say, well, I don't know what I'm doing next. I'm just not going to do anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And I hope that those of you listening are really finding a lot of encouragement in hearing both of us share that we've been through those seasons. I know one of the things you have coming up, it's by the time people hear this episode, it will be in the past, but is your workshop. Do you want to talk a little bit about what inspired this workshop? And then we're going to dive into some of the content for those who couldn't be there physically with you in person.
Yes. Yeah. So the workshop, interestingly enough, started because of a friendship that I developed with one of my favorite podcasters. So her name is Rachel Nielsen, and she has a podcast called 3 in 30. And I kind of just stumbled upon her podcast and binge listened to it and sent her a DM and said, hey, I love what you're doing. This episode really, with no intention behind it. I just wanted to tell her that she was doing a good job because I knew how much how hard it is. And so then we started this conversation and it led to a friendship. And she actually had done a smaller workshop called Declutter Your Motherhood, because her podcast is about decluttering motherhood on the inside, our expectations, the emotional parts of it. And she's like, Mika, you are the declutterer, being in, organizing and being such a fan of it and a promoter of it. How about we team up and we can do a holistic workshop where we're talking about the inside and the outside. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. This one is geared for moms. But just because we are both moms, and we find that moms, especially, that have businesses or even don't, you get overwhelmed even more so. There's more responsibility now and more desires of wanting to do things, wanting our kids to be a certain way, wanting to be a good mom. So motherhood is kind of what we focused our decluttering efforts around. But as I share about this today, we can certainly replace mom or motherhood with business owner, with a wife, with a speaker. So these are decluttering tactics and ideas and concepts that you can apply to any role in your life.
Yeah. And it's so true. I think back to that conversation about balance. It's not so much balance that we really are after. It's the feelings that we believe it will bring. And I think what my intention is for everyone to take away from this conversation is realizing that those internal feelings of peace, of fulfillment, of ease that you're really after might be more tangible than you think, without having to find this mystical unicorn called balance. And so let's start by talking a little bit. I love how you, in the workshop, you're tackling both. You're tackling the internal decluttering as well as the external. So for women, what kind of decluttering do you see most often that women could really, really benefit from in terms of the personal side, the internal thoughts and feelings, emotions that often are getting in the way of us really fulfilling the purpose that we're here to fulfill?
Okay, so I think there are two decluttering kind of things that have been really beneficial for those that we have taught with, have helped. But one is decluttering yourself of the shoulds. I should be a better mom. Okay, well, what does that look like? Or I should be a better business owner. I should be a better speaker. All the shoulds are coming from thin air. You are making them up and placing them into your heart and your mind. And it is a huge distraction. It is a huge piece of resistance. It keeps you small. It holds you down. And so in this workshop, what we are doing with the mothers that are coming is sitting down and writing out our shoulds. What are the shoulds? And the reason why we wanted to do a workshop is because we want the women to sit down and work and do this. So if you're listening, this could be an activity you can do on your own as well, is listing out on a piece of paper, what are your shoulds? And you'll notice it creep into your daily conversations. It'll creep into your thoughts. And one thing I heard the other day, actually at church, is that no one talks to yourself more than you. And I thought
Isn't that
that is
true?
really good. Like, we are telling ourselves, you should do this. You should be a better mom. You shouldn't, and what I love about Rachel, why I love teaming up with her, is because she also has been very open about the shoulds that we placed on ourselves. For example, I should like reading with my kids, or we both felt like, oh, I should like playing with my kids on the floor, but actually I'd rather go work. Or I have the ability to be a stay-at-home mom, but I should like this, but actually I really like being out in the workplace, or I like being a business owner. So all these shoulds are holding us back from actually our purpose and things that fulfill us and make us happy. So getting rid of those shoulds, like tell yourself to stop talking to yourself about all these shoulds, and decluttering your life from those.
Oh, I once heard it said, and this makes me giggle every time, to stop shoulding on ourselves.
Yes.
That was like, I think just that little bit of humor lightens it up and has me realize, just like you said, how much I'm the one that is putting those shoulds on myself. It's actually not coming from anyone else. And if it is, it actually doesn't carry as much weight. If someone else tells me what I should do, I think there's like the stubborn 13-year-old inside that's like, well, no, I'm going to do it my own way. But I don't have that same attitude when it's coming from myself. So even just the practice of stepping back and analyzing, wait, where did that come from? Oh, okay, I made up that I should be that way because I see my other friend on Instagram and she's that way. But what's true for me? I think that practice alone is so powerful, evaluating where a lot of those expectations we place on ourselves even come from.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's something that we work through in the workshop, but also, analyzing our strengths and weaknesses. We can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
And also not only strengths and weaknesses, but what do I like doing in my business? What do I like doing as a mom? And writing out the things that you're good at and focusing on those, not the things that you should be good at and that you should be doing. It's just highlighting all the things that you love to do for your kids or with your kids, or, what you want to be for your kids or for your business. It's pretty well understood that like you should focus on the things in your business that you're good at and delegate the rest. A lot easier said than done, for sure, especially for those that have a little bit more of a controlling aspect like myself. But as I've rid myself of these shoulds and saying, hey, I'm being honest with myself. This is not my thing. And it's okay that it's not my thing. I can't be everything.
Yeah.
So let it go and declutter it from your life, because it's only going to make things harder. And so that is one way I think that, we can really declutter ourselves on the inside. And another thing is decluttering the things that are covering you up. And what I mean by that is that, it's really hard to feel emotions like depression and anxiety and overwhelm and stress and even exhaustion. It's really hard to sit with those emotions, and we like to be comfortable. And in order to be comfortable, we bring things into our lives to distract us from that discomfort. And so an example of this is, in my life, like I had a lot of things that I was putting in so that I could avoid the real, like the elephant in the room, or, trying to cover up anxious feelings. Like, for example, I don't drink anymore because that was my way of like ignoring it. Like, oh, you know what? I don't want to feel anxious right now, so I'm going to have some wine. Or, distracting myself. Even it can be with work. It can be with relationships. And finding that, wait, this is adding 0 to my life. All it's doing is sucking my energy. It's playing life on hard mode. That's what my husband says, of things that you put into your life that it makes life harder. Like, why choose to put those things in your life? So like in your home, when you have all these things that are just cluttering you up, it's you physically cannot move through your home as easily as you should. It's just slowing you down. It's covering up the real thing. It starts accumulating and building up. And the more that builds up, the harder it's going to get to declutter. So of course, the sooner you can declutter, the better, but it's life. Like we let that build up. And so at some point, if you want growth and you want peace and you want to feel more true to who you are, you have to remove that clutter from from your life.
And I love how you pointed out it's a daily, weekly practice of same as with our homes, that if you're living in your home, clutter is going to accumulate, and that's going to be something that you either deal with on a daily, weekly basis, or it piles up. And the same thing goes with our internal clutter. So that actually gave me such a picture of why it's important to stay on top of that emotional decluttering, because it makes it so much harder to function in our lives if we're not.
Yeah, it becomes much more habitual and ingrained, and just it's harder to pull out of those mindsets. The deeper you get into it, and the more burdened and overwhelmed you are by it. So, there's more work for you to do. And that's hard. But the sooner you can kind of get, the little tiny, even just tiny little tasks, just like in a home, if you declutter a drawer, if you, right now I'm doing a 30-day decluttering challenge with my followers and listeners. And, it's like, don't get overwhelmed by all the things you have to do. That's going to overwhelm the most organized, supposedly balanced person. It starts somewhere. And a lot of people don't start because they don't know where and they don't feel like they can do it. And so I love promoting. I've really come from, let's organize your whole home. Like, let's do a big thing and get your closets perfect and pantries. But it's actually no, like, let's break it down and break it down and break it down and break it down. And where can you feel success, and where can you feel really like, oh, I did it. Like, that was not that hard. And that really just has that like snowball effect. And it's not dumbing it down. It's not because you can't do the big things, but it's just because that's just a much easier, more positive way to go about it.
Right. Which is such a perfect transition to talking a little bit now about our physical spaces, because I'm a big believer in the power of our physical space over how we feel, how productive we are, the amount that we're able to accomplish, or even just how, if we're resting, how rested we're able to feel. So I'm sure you have even more to say on that, given your line of work. So what have you seen decluttering physical spaces offers people in their life?
I see it offer peace, relief, happiness, sense of accomplishment, and which all lead to then more energy and more time for the things that matter. So when I set up systems in the home, or I talk about setting up systems, you first have to, in an organizing process, you have to declutter before you can start to set up systems, because then you're just setting up systems. Now, again, this being your business too, you're setting up systems with all this junk that you don't need. So you really do have to declutter. But oftentimes, one will end with declutter and then there's no system in place.
Yeah.
So they really go together. They're very separate. Organizing and decluttering is different. One is removing, one is more like adding a system. And when you have two of those in place, then it works so well. And so it is hard to figure out how to do a system, but I have found that once you go through the decluttering and set up systems in your life, in your physical space, then it saves you time because you know where to find things. It really saves time when you're cleaning up your house. So you don't have to be a mom. Like, keeping up a home is hard. And in those times where you're really busy with your business, or it's a busy season of your life, or just every morning is super busy trying to get out the door, or at the end of the night when you're wrapping up your day, it just makes that process of putting everything away so much easier. So I will walk into our kitchen and it is like a bomb, because I have 3 kids, ages 3 to 14, and a husband that leaves things around everywhere too. But like all of us, for us to clean up, it is so much faster because everything has a home. And while that may seem like, okay, I'm still not sold, that sounds controlling, like I don't want to live in a place that's like everything has a place and it's so robotic. But really, like, think about like the decision fatigue. Like that is tiring,
yes.
you know, like, and that's huge. Like we are decision fatigued left and right in our lives. We really are. And, you know, things are coming at us, like you said, like so many places and social media and all the shoulds and everything's coming. And there are certain things, you know, there's so many things in life you cannot control. But your home, you have control over that. You really do. And if you're feeling like you don't have control of that, that is work you have to do inside of you and your mindset. You really do. Like you're kind of making an excuse, honestly. So the faster and the better and the more thorough you can overcome that mindset and that limiting belief, the quicker you can find yourself in a place of peace where you live and where you work. And then that'll just have this snowball effect into all the other areas of your life. Now, I don't promote perfectionism, and that is often associated with organizing. It's just about being prepared. Like, as you think about how this could help in your life, all the little systems, it's just so you're better prepared. Like, putting things away, finding things, and all of life in between. It's being prepared. Like, oh, I have my water bottle because I can hydrate today. Like I'm holding this up on the video with Lindsay right now, but I prepped this last night. So this morning when everything was chaotic, it was ready for me. Or I know where I'm going to place this thing every single day, so I don't have to think about it. It's less to think about.
Yeah. And I love how
preparation is.
You brought up decision fatigue. We actually talked about that on another podcast episode because it's so real. And I think that it's something that if people are starting to understand, may at the beginning stage, wanting to get organized, wanting to start decluttering can feel a little overwhelming if this is brand new. But I want you to dive a little deeper into when you were talking about starting small. So when you're working with someone or even just giving advice to friends who say, okay, I want to get on this track, where do I start? Maybe, I know you mentioned just even picking one drawer. What are like maybe your top 2 to 3 places you recommend people start so they can start to get those little wins under their belt and start to feel the benefits of decluttering their life?
Sure. Yeah, definitely starting with a drawer. I think the kitchen is where you find a lot of drawers, and the kitchen is where you spend a lot of your time in a home. It's just where you gather. And so a junk drawer, a silverware drawer. Today on the 30-day decluttering challenge, it's to do a cabinet of all of your tumblers and water bottles and coffee mugs. Do a clean out of all of those and you will find things that it's just like an area that accumulates, like random tumblers. There's a lot of branded stuff that comes in cup form into your house, and just doing a cleanse of that. But I think a drawer is just like a really easy space to visualize. And if you're buying any organizing products, it's a small space, so the investment in time and money is small. I think a junk drawer is a really great place. You probably have a lot of things in there that you don't need. So like menus, you can get that online now. You don't need to keep that. And, all just random the stuff that ends up in the junk drawer. So that's one great place, I think, in the kitchen is your junk drawer, but also maybe your water bottles and tumblers. But also not just like your physical space is a good small place to start, but also with your time. And in the workshop, one thing, and also just what I love talking about, we even have podcast episodes just about it, but is your morning routine, your night routine. I am a huge proponent of a night routine. I know in personal development, business world, it's all about what are the CEO's morning routines. But I feel like the night routine is a missed opportunity for setting yourself up for success the next day. Because a lot of times you have every intention to do your morning routine of wellness practices, but then you find something comes up, or you sleep through the alarm, or your kids, something happens and you don't have the time. So it's using the night to prepare yourself for the morning as much as you can, and also give yourself really great wind down ritual to give you the energy for the morning routine. Because the morning routine is like what gives you the energy for the day and sets the tone and the mindset. But the night routine gives you that space because you've done all the important things the night before.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you pointed that out because you're right. I don't think the nighttime routine gets enough love. And I
Mm-mm.
find for myself when it's the simplest thing as we have like this kitchen island, if that is cleared and wiped down, and either I have my candle or right now I have some beautiful flowers on it, coming down and seeing that first thing in the morning versus random things that just accumulate on that island completely changes the tone for my morning and sets up
Mm-hmm.
my morning routine. So that's one
Yes.
thing that I really try to stick to is before I go to bed, no matter how tired I am, I'll wipe down that counter really quick, put away. And I find if I do it nightly, it's not that much to put away. But if I
Mm-hmm.
let it accumulate for a week, it gets a little like an episode of Hoarders, if I'm being honest.
Exactly. And I knew you were my spirit animal because you just said, no matter how tired I am, I do it anyway. And I think that is super key. Now I don't want anyone to burn out. And if they're truly exhausted, like go to sleep. But I think sometimes
Yeah.
it's so much easier to put on a show, or it's so much easier to scroll Instagram and be like, I'm just tired. Like I'm just tired. I don't want to
Mhm.
do it. But I force myself. I still have to. Last night I had to force myself to do my night routine. I was upstairs in the bedroom. I was like seconds away from just like calling it a night and just going to bed. And I said, no, Mika, you get yourself downstairs
Pep talk.
and set yourself, yep, pep talk. I have to give it to myself and just say, you know what, you will feel so much better tomorrow morning. You are setting yourself up for the morning. It's going to be crazy and you are going to bed early so that you have the energy for the next day. And
Yeah.
every time I invest in that, it makes such a difference.
Oh, amen. Okay. This episode is inspiring me to go and organize something like as soon as we hit stop recording. So I'll be sure to share
That
that. I'll
sounds good.
post and share it with you.
I would love it.
Um, one of the things that I love about following your Instagram account is you give so many great tools and little gadgets that make all the difference in being more organized and feeling more organized. You inspired my bamboo kitchen drawer organizers.
Oh,
So thank you
good.
for that.
Yes.
So what are like the top three must-have items that either your followers just ask you to repost all the time or that have made the biggest difference for you? Like what are your favorite Amazon finds or things people don't even know exist?
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I have a blog post called My Favorite Amazon Finds for Home Travel and Wellness.
Oh,
So
we'll
they're
have to
all,
share the link to
yeah,
that. You'll have to send it to me and
I
we'll
will.
share it in the show notes.
Perfect. So in that, there's several things. I'm all about a good Amazon find, so I love that you say that. Um, Bamboo drawer dividers that you mentioned, are they the spring-loaded ones?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you guys, this is transformative. Be prepared. So you have these like dividers you put into your drawer anywhere. You can, for example, like I have them to separate my Nespressos, but they're just spring loaded, meaning they're like adjustable and you put them into your drawer and you're like, what is this like piece of bamboo really going to do? But it's a transformative experience because now your drawer looks like a custom organized, like a drawer that you had built with little sections, like the divided section. So those are definitely a must. I love those because they're so versatile. And you can take them in and out and use them, reuse them, place them somewhere different. You know, you can move them to the left and the right. So all about praise hands
They are
for,
amazing.
yeah,
Praise
for
hand
bamboo.
emoji for those.
Another thing that I really love are packing cubes. Those have been very popular as I've posted about them for the last couple of years. And what I love doing is I love like labeling them. I'm working on a way to label them that they'll stay. I haven't found a way, but I'm working on them right now. But packing cubes are super. I travel a lot. So there's ones on Amazon that aren't expensive and they're really simple. Whenever I look for organizing products, I look for simplicity and versatility. Um, they can come with a lot of bells and whistles. And if you walk into the Container Store, you'll find a gadget to organize every little specific thing, you know, that you're like, wow, I didn't know that that needed to be organized. But I
Right.
don't really love those all the time because they are
Mm.
not as movable and versatile. And I often find things for the kitchen in the office section. And I use things for the bathroom that are in the closet section. I just look for things that are very neutral and simple. That's the best way to go. You don't have to go to Container Store, but anywhere you shop from, look for simple and neutral because the visual effect of organization is super important. And if you
Yes.
have all these different colors and patterns, it's just going to look very busy. Um, the last thing I'll mention is my berry prep, which is something that has kind of taken off in a really
I see
weird
this
way.
all the time on your story. This is all the rage. Yes,
All the
please tell
rage.
us.
Weird. So my husband calls it berry gate because what happened is first, like I do meal prep. Like I've been doing meal prep for about 6-7 years, and not like necessarily like the fitness kind where I'm like weighing my macros and like portioning it. It's just like preparing like a sous chef all the ingredients for dinners this coming week or something like that. And so very simple, but like I love strawberries and blueberries and all those things. And I just kind of chop them up and have them ready. I use mason jars. And the reason why I use mason jars is just because one, it's glass. So I try to use more glass. But second, when you're organizing, you want to think about the vertical space that you have available. And a lot of times vertical space is not utilized. And rather than stacking a bunch of Tupperware containers on top of each other, a mason jar kind of is a long, tall thing that you can just kind of have a bunch of them in one space, and you can see and pull out things. And it's really space saving. But when I started sharing that I was doing this, people like got all up in arms of me prepping berries in advance. Like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't wash them in advance and you shouldn't cut them. And I'm like,
Really?
Really should. Is that it? Let's analyze this should. I'm going to go against that and say, actually, this saves me a lot of time. And a principle of organization is that you'll use things more if you can see them, if you can access them. So I can see my berries because they're right front and center, prepped and ready to go. And because they're ready to go, I use them more and our kids eat them. And it's easy to reach for that, instead of like having to wash and cut them every single time. So I've gotten a lot of people on board with berry prep. I joke that it's like my one lasting legacy of life in the world. That's what it'll be on my tombstone.
There you go.
Berry prep. But yeah, just these simple little things that you can do. Yeah. And it really helps you like feel like, all right, I've got this. Like there's one thing that is ready for me. There's one thing that is divided and looks nice. Like it's just like one simple success, and it really propels you in a really good direction.
Well, I will confess, the berry prep is how I knew you were my spirit animal, because I've always done that. However, you're inspiring me to put them in a mason jar or just a prettier container than my Tupperware. But what I find is that, number one, I do use them. They don't go bad as fast either. They don't spoil as fast. So I'm Team Berry, and anyone else who's not, then you can just see yourself out. We're a Team Berry prep on this podcast.
Berry, I love it. Yay.
So I'm going to give everyone, as we start to wrap this up, a little call to action, a challenge, if you will. I want you to take one of the things that you have heard from this episode. You can choose to prep your berries and share a photo with us. You can choose to organize a drawer, whatever it was from this episode that you heard that you are actually going to put into action in your life. And I want you to post it on social media, post it on Instagram, and tag Mika so that we can see. You can tag me too, so that I can see that you heard it on the podcast and you're actually doing something about it, because organizing is one of those things. I equate it to, people having beautiful Pinterest boards of all these things that they aspire to do, but then it makes no difference in our lives if we don't act on it. So in the next 48 hours after you listen to this podcast, that is my challenge to you, is take one small step, even if it's the tiniest drawer in your home, and just see how that feels. See how it feels to have berries prepped and ready to go in the refrigerator. It'll change your life.
Transformative.
So obviously, as we're talking, we keep mentioning your amazing workshop, which when this podcast airs will have already passed, but you have some exciting things coming out soon that people can access from wherever they live. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you have going on?
Yes. So this fall, I am launching 2 online courses and products that support kind of what we talked about here today. So one is going to focus on setting up morning and night routines into your life. I really feel like it starts with you. It starts with decluttering yourself, setting up systems for yourself, and then going outward into your home. Like, you will be set. So we're doing a deep dive into morning and night routines, make it work for your busy life. And then the second course is more of like a masterclass on personal and home organization. organization. So it is challenging because organization is really personalized to each person's space and their belongings. So this course will help you tailor principles of organization to your life and what you need, and then have you practice that in your home. And I'll have different tiers and levels of what you can do based on what time you have available or how much energy you want to spend on it. That's up to you. But I want to make it accessible and successful for everyone too.
Oh, I cannot wait. I will be your first customer. I'm so excited for that. And where can people find you? Where can they find information about your new course once it's available?
Yes. So my blog and website is simply mikaperry.com. And that is also my Instagram handle. So Mika Perry, you can just find updates there. So I would love to connect with you there and share some organizing tips. And then you can also find information more kind of on the business and that balance of business and life on the podcast. It's called Good to Be Home. Host it with my husband, Russ Perry. And it is a weekly podcast. We air on Mondays.
Awesome. And I'm going to make sure to link all of that for you guys below, including that amazing blog article with all the things that we need to go buy on Amazon. So I'll link that for you. But okay, final question. And I love, you were in the room with us at Powerhouse Women 2019. So you have a good feeling for what this community and this movement is really all about. So my question for you is, if you had one message for women to encourage them to get into action around their next big idea, what would you want to say?
So this pulls up to me something, actually, we have a piece of artwork that every workshop attendee is going to get. And it really hits just close to home for me. And it's that only you can give your children a happy and fulfilled mom. And that to me means that it is in your power to give yourself and those around you and your business and everything that you're doing that happiness and fulfillment, but it starts with you. So you take the first step. It's up to you. You have that power inside of you to make that happen. So it starts with you, and then you will just see that ripple effect, that positivity, just seep into everything that you do from there on out.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Mika, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. I can't wait to continue being your new friend.
Yay!
And berry prep. I'll come and berry prep with you.
Hashtag berry prep.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on today. It was such an honor.